Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth hangout of our mobile computing with App Inventor course. This week, I thought it would be a good idea to focus on the upcoming week 6, which will really be week 6 and week 7, although I think we can have another hangout a week from now. Week 6 and week 7, as you probably know, is going to be the wrap-up for the course, where you're going to be asked to submit a project of your own design, as well as take a final exam. So I thought I would focus on that. I will walk through some of the requirements for that, and hopefully people will come on with questions. If you'd like, there's room for others on this hangout. If you'd like to be on the hangout with me live, you could come online and ask me in the chat to invite you. And I think I'll need your email address, but I'll be happy to invite you, and then you can ask questions live on air. And I'll try to answer questions. So, let me bring up let me share my screen and bring up the week 6 requirements. Actually, I won't share my screen, so because if I share my screen, I don't think I can see the chat. Well, let me try that. I will share my screen and bring up the week 6 requirements so I could walk through them with you. So I'm going to share the screen. And whoops, we don't want that. There we go. So here, I hope you are seeing my screen. Let me go over here. Yep, I think you are. So I've posted on the week 5 hangout an overview of the week 6 requirements. So there are basically 2 requirements. And of course, these are mainly for people who are wanting to get a verified certificate. These are requirements for them, but they're optional for everyone else. But I hope others will go through the exercise of taking the final exam, for no other reason than to just show yourself how much you've learned in the course. And also, of course, doing a project of your own is going to be very rewarding and very enjoyable, I hope. So the final exam is made up. We've been beta testing it. It consists of 30 questions, each worth a point. It counts for 30% of your overall score on the course. There are 24 multiple choice questions and 6 coding questions. They're very similar to the ones you've been having throughout the course. I don't think you'll find any surprises there. You'll have 3 hours to complete the exam, and the way this will work is you can decide when during the next 2 weeks you want to do it, and then once you start it, you'll have 3 hours in a contiguous chunk of time to complete it. Of course, it's open book. The way the difference between the quizzes we've been doing throughout the course is that for the multiple choice questions, you'll only get 1 try at an answer. So during the course, the multiple choice allowed you to see the answer after 1 try and try again. Well, the difference is that in this case, you'll only get 1 try. So make sure you read the questions carefully. They're all multiple choice, 1 right answer. For the programming coding questions, the 6 coding questions, they're going to be just the way you saw them during the course. You'll get as many tries as you like, as long as you keep clicking the Test My Solution button. However, you'll only get 1 chance to click the check button, the edX final check button. So for those, you can make sure you have the coding correct before you submit it for grading. Okay, and the final has to be done by December 7th, as does the project itself. All right, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that come up about the final. So far, I don't see any. The other part of week 6 is going to be the final project. And this is going to be something we've never tried before, so we've been working through how it goes, and I'll describe that to you. This is going to be peer graded or peer reviewed or peer assessed. And you'll have the whole 2 weeks to complete it. The way it's going to work is you're going to do a project, create an app of your own. And I'm happy to answer questions or brainstorm with you about ideas for that. When you're done with it, you'll have to put together a presentation where you show through a one-page document that you post online in an accessible, publicly accessible site that your app meets the requirements that I'm going to go over here. Once you submit the link to your presentation, you will then enter the peer assessment process. First, you'll be asked to review 2 projects that I created and wrote up and peer reviewed myself to do what's called training on how to do the peer review. And the peer review description is just below here. But you'll be asked to assess those examples until your assessment matches my assessment. That will be regarded as you've learned how to do the peer assessment. And once you complete those 2, then you will be asked to assess 3 additional projects, 3 projects of your peers in the course. And you will receive a grade for your project when your project has received 2 peer assessments from your peers in the course. So you're going to assess 3, and your project will be assessed by 2. The reason for the 3-2, and actually App Inventor recommends 5-3, but I think that's maybe excessive. So we're going to try the 3-2. I hope it works. The reason for the 3-2 is that the system wants to make sure that there are enough people reviewing so that everybody who wants to have a grade on their final project will get one. Okay? All right, so what could you do for a final project? Well, it's completely up to you. You can come up with your own app, and I've seen ideas in the forum that sound terrific for creating your own app. And it can be anything you like. Initially, we thought we would maybe ask you to do something that was in some way socially useful, but we've dropped that because it seemed to us too difficult to define what socially useful meant. So you can really do anything you want here. Do a game, do an app that is socially useful in some way, or just for entertainment. The key thing is it has to be a non-trivial app. And what I mean by that will be detailed below. Of course, one of the things you could do is you could do a enhancement or an extension of one of the projects we did in the course, as long as it's a non-trivial extension. And I'll be more precise about what that means in a moment. But basically, it means if your extension to the project satisfies the technical requirements that I'm going to describe in a moment, then that would count as a significant extension and would certainly qualify as an acceptable project in the rubric. Okay? So these projects have to be done, and you have to be able to go through the peer assessment by December 7th. And again, to review, you'll post a link to your project presentation, and you'll follow a simple rubric to assess 3 of your peers, and then your peers will be assessing your project. And then as soon as 2 peers have graded your project, then you will receive a grade. Okay, here are the minimum technical requirements. These are minimum requirements. I expect a lot of you are going to easily exceed these. So I've identified them in terms of 3 categories: data abstraction, procedural abstraction, and algorithms and control. And abstraction has been a big topic in the course. So in terms of data abstraction, your app has to have at least 2 variables. These can be either global variables or local variables. In addition, your app has to make use of some kind of data structure, such as a list or a database. Both of those would satisfy that requirement. In terms of procedural abstraction, your app must include at least 2 programmer-defined procedures or functions. We've been practicing these a lot in the quizzes. So these are the purple blocks where you define, you give your procedure or function a name. These are different from the event handlers. So if your app is nothing but event handlers, then you won't have satisfied this requirement. But it's pretty easy to take an event handler and define a procedure to connect with it and call the procedure from the event handler. So we don't think this will be too difficult a requirement. And finally, your app has to use at least one if-else structure or one loop, one of those two control structures. The if-else structure doesn't have to have both if and else in it. An if statement is an if-else structure, just one missing the else, okay? So those are the technical requirements. So again, if you decide to do a enhancement of an existing app, say the Broadcast Hub app, as long as your enhancement, that part of the app satisfies these technical requirements, that would be okay. Okay, so here's the rubric. Each of these criteria are worth 5 points, ranging from 0, unable to assess, to 5 for good. And that means the total score you can get on your project is 20 points. So is the purpose of the app clearly described in your presentation? And is the app itself one that clearly meets that purpose? That's 5 points. Does it meet these technical requirements that we just described? That's 5 points. Was the app, were you able to download and run the app, and did it run without major issues, without major bugs? That's 5 points. And does the app represent a significant creative accomplishment as defined by these technical requirements? Okay. Now, the presentation you're going to be asked to do is described here. So at a minimum, you need to have a title for your app. You need to give a 1-sentence elevator pitch, why your app is the best thing since sliced bread. You need to have a 1-paragraph description of the app that describes its purpose and scope and summarizes its basic functions. Again, these are minimum requirements. You need a screenshot of your app showing one or more, at least one of its screens, what you consider the most important one perhaps, and then a screenshot of your blocks. And here is where you would identify that it's meeting these technical requirements. Your blocks in that screenshot should show your procedures, your variables, your if-then statement, and so on, okay? And I'll show you an example of this in a moment. Finally, and this is really important, you need to put up a QR code and a download link, both, so that your peers can download and run your app. This is a QR code and a link of the APK. So you need to build your project and post a link of it on your site, on your presentation. Here's a sample presentation. Let me click here to show you this. Okay, this is one of the projects you'll be assessing. This is one of the good ones. I'm just using our Trinity College walking tour. So here's the title. Here's my elevator pitch. Here's my 1-paragraph description. This was done when we were still considering the social benefits, so I included a line about that. Here is the QR code that you would need to download the app if you're going to run it on your mobile device. And here's a download link, which points to the same APK file as the QR code, which you would use if you were going to run it on your emulator. And then here are the blocks, and you can see I've identified by some annotations where these blocks satisfy the minimum requirements. So that's the write-up. And I've put mine up on a Google site, as you can see here. And these instructions, which will be available, at the beginning of the week, will show you how to create a similar site if you want to use the Google site. Okay, so you're going to create a presentation like that. Now, where should you post your presentation? It doesn't matter to us as long as your peers can get access to it. Now, by access, that means public, no logins, no memberships required to get access. So I don't have to be a member of Facebook to get your app or LinkedIn or any of those sites. You can put it up on your own website if you have one. You can put it up as a Google Doc instead of a Google site, the one I showed you. But it's important that it be publicly accessible. And this I can't stress enough, because if your peers can't assess your project, can't get at your project presentation or your APK, they won't be able to assess you, and you'll be getting zeros on all of those assessment criteria. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now and see if we have any questions in the forum or in the Hangout. So let me go back here. I'm going to stop. I'm back. We have 4 viewers. Let's see. Do any of the viewers want me to invite them? If you want to be invited, put a note in the group chat here and we'll invite you. And you can ask your question live. But let's go see if we have any Q&A here. Okay, so I'm available for questions. Does anybody have any? I see Jason, one of our project managers there. Jason, did I give a reasonable overview of the process that we're going to all be going through next week, this next week? Or are there questions that you can think of that I should address? No, I'm not sure, Jason. He said he thought it was pretty clear. Okay. Do any of our viewers have any questions? You can either put them in the chat, or there's also a Q&A chat that you can also use to ask questions. Jason reports that he's been living with this edX platform for a while, so these things are a little clearer to him than they are to me. Jason, let me ask you a question. Do you think the 3-2 breakdown will work for our course? Meaning each participant assesses 3 others and is assessed by 2 others. So do you think that's enough? Jason reports that he thinks the 3-2 will be enough, will be sufficient, a sufficient split to work for our course. So that's good. Let's see, let me go to the Q&A tab. I've seen a couple of comments in the forum. I wonder, Jason, it's hard for me to go and look at the forum now, but perhaps you could take a quick look there while we're live here to see if there have been any questions posted there and just relay them to us here. But I've seen some concerns raised in the forum that the exam is going to be hard or the project's going to be hard. I just want to encourage you to assure you that the exam is not hard. And if you've been taking the quizzes and doing the exercises as you've been going through the course, you won't have any trouble with this exam. You can also, of course, it's open book, so there should be sufficient time in 3 hours for you to actually go and research some answers if you've forgotten stuff. The project also isn't meant to be hard. It's meant to challenge you a little bit in that you've got to come up with some of your own ideas. But if you want to brainstorm on the forum, that's a great thing to do. Some people have already posted ideas for projects on the forum. And there's a lot out there about App Inventor. And there's a lot of tutorials. So if you have an idea and you don't know where to start, Google it, and you're likely to find someone's put up a tutorial or a discussion of it that can help get you started. So I want to assure you that this is very doable in the 2 weeks we have, and not to worry. Now, Jason, I have a question for you. What exactly is the deadline? we're saying December 7th. I'm just a little worried that similarly to the way we were finding that our access to the certificate button would disappear before we expected it to, that the curtain might come down on the December 7th deadline before we expect it to. Is there some way to be very precise about that December 7th? Jason says, we'll make sure it closes after 11:59 p.m. on December 7th, UTC. Okay. Another thing I want to mention, one other thing that I just thought of. Again, I want to emphasize how important it is to make sure you get the correct URL posted for your presentation, and that it contains a correct URL for your APK. Otherwise, no one will be able to test your app. The instructions for setting up your presentation emphasize this very strongly. I think what we're going to do is you'll see if you're not experienced with edX, that you'll be asked. There'll be a little when you come to submit your project and begin the peer assessment process. You'll see a little text window in which you'll be asked to post your response, it's called. Your response for this course is simply this URL where your presentation is hosted. You can't format it in any way, so you can't turn it into a link. You'll just be posting a URL as a piece of text. What I think we're going to do is also, as an option, say in addition to the URL, you could also post your email address, an email where you can be reached by the 3 reviewers who would, be randomly assigned your project to review, to give them a way to contact you if something is broken on your link, meaning if they can't get access to your presentation or to your APK file. But that's completely optional. I don't think it's necessary, because I think what you want to do is completely test your URL. Make sure you test it have your friends test it, people who don't have the same login accounts that you do, to make sure it's accessible by someone who doesn't share your permissions. And if you do that, I think then we should be fine. So it looks like I've taken up the whole half hour without describing this. I think, let's see, are there any Q&As here? The question did come up in the Q&A. By December 7th, we need also to perform the peer review. Yes, that's the case. So the question was, do we also need to have the peer review done by December 7th? Yes. Everything needs to be done by that deadline so that your project can be given its grade. Okay? And by the way, so the peer assessment is worth a total of 20 points, as I described, but the project itself is 30%. So if you get a perfect 20 for 20, that would mean you'd get 30 points towards your overall grade. Okay? And the final exam is worth a total of 30 points, so it maps directly to the 30% weight that it has in your final grade. We have a few minutes left. Do we have any other questions? Jason, do you have anything else, anything you might want to add? Well, Jason says, if you're in the United States, have a great Thanksgiving holiday. And yes, of course, I wanted to say that as well. For those not in the U.S., Thanksgiving is one of the best holidays. You don't have to go shopping for gifts or anything. You don't have to put up decorations. You can just enjoy a nice meal with your friends and family, and talk about mobile computing and talk about the great app you're building. So have a great Thanksgiving, everyone, and enjoy the experience of this next week. I think it's going to be enjoyable, and you're all going to do great projects, and I can't wait to see some of them. Okay, thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.